G'day guys, how's it going? It's Woody here. Thanks very much for stopping by and checking out this video. Just a quick one. It's a preview of the Sunshine Coast Marathon Festival being held this weekend in a few days' time. I'm running the half marathon as part of my Sydney Marathon preparation. Hope you've been following along with that Sydney Marathon series, guys. Only 4 weeks to go after this weekend. So the Sunshine Coast Half Marathon is a really important one for me heading into the Sydney Marathon. I'm going to share with you what shoes I'm going to use this weekend, how I'm going to approach the Sunshine Coast Half Marathon. Will I be running the full distance? Will I use the run walk strategy that I'm going to be using for the Sydney Marathon? So stick around and I'll let you know about that. We'll also look at some of the elite runners taking part in the Sunshine Coast Marathon and Half Marathon. And I've got a funny story to share with you about some new shoes that have dropped and have arrived today. Here's the box, guys, from Asics, the big shoe reveal in just one moment. I've been looking for a new marathon shoe or a marathon shoe for the Sydney Marathon, and I have been doing the bulk of my long mileage in the New Balance Super Comp Trainer version 3 as part of this Sydney Marathon training block. This is a shoe that I have run a couple of half marathons in at Hobart and also at Cairns recently. This shoe was in contention for the half marathon at the Sunny Coast this weekend, and I was almost ready to pull the trigger on buying the New Balance Super Comp Elite version 4, I think it is, the old version, because it was a little bit cheaper. But recently I've been running in an older pair of the Asics Metaspeed Sky. Now this is a shoe that I bought in 2022, primarily to be used in the marathon. Recently I've got back into this shoe for my faster sessions and I've been really enjoying it. Now I put this shoe in the cupboard and didn't run in it for probably 18 months, and it just got me thinking because I knew that the Tokyo iterations of the Metaspeeds were getting close to being released in Australia. So I checked, I went online, I found out that they were dropping last week, just a few days ago, midnight on the Thursday night. I think it was July 25. A little bit more digging and I found that a online outlet was going to be holding like a random draw. So you put your name in, and if you were lucky enough to get pulled out in the random draw, you got a pair of the shoes. So I did that, but I also thought that, okay, I'm going to stay up and I'll get on the Asics website at midnight. Now I finish work at about 10:30, 11 o'clock, so I thought I'll stay up for another hour. So I jumped on the Asics website about 5 minutes before midnight, put in my details, selected my shoe size and all that sort of stuff. I got the shoes, fantastic. So what I thought I would do then was jump onto the online outlet where I'd put my name into the random draw and just withdraw from that draw because I didn't need two pairs. So I jumped onto my emails and there it was from the online outlet. Congratulations, you have been successful in the random draw. So I ended up with two pair of these shoes. Now when I put my name down for the random draw, I've misread the time. I thought that I had until the following night to be able to withdraw from the draw, but as it turned out, it was midnight as well, so it was exactly the same. I got the pair from Asics, I got the pair from the online outlet, so I'm now stuck with two pair. Not sure what I'm going to do with the second pair. I may on-sell it, I may just throw it in the cupboard and use it at a later date. I thought I was being smart because I thought that these shoes would sell out uber quick, but I've outsmarted myself because even today, a few days after the official release, the shoes are still available. So I could have waited. It was an expensive mistake, 380 bucks a pair. You know, what are you going to do? So I've got a decision to make whether I on-sell or whether I keep. But the shoes that I have gone with are the Tokyo Metaspeed Sky. This shoe is incredibly light. Even when the package was delivered, I thought, I don't think there's any shoes in here. But anyway, so here we are, guys. We got the Metaspeed Skies. This will be my marathon shoe. Will I be using it for the Sunshine Coast Half Marathon this weekend? The answer to that is no. I'm not going to risk running in a new pair of shoes. So in the end, it's come down to these two, the New Balance Super Comp Trainer version 3 or the Asics Metaspeed Sky Plus. I thought long and hard about this because this shoe's been really good in the half marathons that I have run over the past couple of months. What I want to do is give this a crack in a half marathon, so that's what I'm going to be going with for race day at the Sunshine Coast. And I have a feeling that I have only done 2 races in this shoe. It was the Gold Coast Marathon in 2022, and there may have been a 10-kilometre race a couple of weeks before that marathon. The rest of the time I've just used it in shorter speed sessions, but like I said, I've really enjoyed running in this shoe over the past next couple of weeks, yeah, it's got the nod for the Sunshine Coast Half Marathon this weekend. Okay, so that brings me to race strategy for the Sunshine Coast Half Marathon. As you know, I'm using the run walk strategy for race day at the Sydney Marathon, so I'm going to be using a similar setup for the Sunshine Coast. It is going to be a little bit flexible because there is a hill in the Sunshine Coast Half Marathon that goes over Alexandra Headland that will require me to walk down the hill because, as you know, the dicky knee doesn't like running downhill. The hill comes in pretty soon after the start, and also coming back from a little out and back at around about 5-6-ish kilometres. I will be walking down the hill both times, so that means that there will be a little bit of flexibility in the first sort of 6 to 8 kilometres. From there on, it's pretty flat, so we're looking at 13-14 kilometres of flat running. I'll probably break up into even segments. You know, I've been using that system in my training. The longer sessions that I've been doing midweek have been working really well, so I don't see why there's any reason to change that system or that strategy for race day at the Sunshine Coast. As I've said all along, the Sunshine Coast is one of my favourite events. It's one of the events that I really look forward to every year. It's just growing and growing and growing, and from my understanding, it has the inside running to be the marathon course for the Olympic Games when they come to Brisbane in 2032. So that's brought about a new marathon course for this year. It's a 1-lap course. In previous years, we've run 3 laps on the marathon. We've run the half marathon course and then 2 shorter 10K loops. But this year, it is a 1-loop course, looking obviously to the future and 2032 for the Olympics. And already we are starting to see some very good runners turn up on the Sunshine Coast with an eye, I would think, to 2032. And being a 1-lap course, it's going to take in some picturesque sights on the Sunshine Coast. We've got the Alexander Headland that you run over, down through Mooloolaba. You come back again, past Race Precinct there, Maroochydore, Cotton Tree, along the Maroochy River, out onto the Sunshine Coast motorway, north to Mungimba, and then back to finishing at Alexander Headland. Obviously, we're not going to see the marathon runners as much this year because we're not doing the laps, but what we are seeing is the beginning, I believe, of more elite runners targeting the Sunshine Coast, probably more as a look-see to what the course may look like in 2032. And just on that, I'll just go through some of the runners who are taking part in the marathon this weekend. Now, this is just what has been released by race organisers, Atlas Events. We've got Ryan Gregson, an Australian Olympian. He's got the best time of the entrants, a 2:13 marathon. From Japan, Yoshiki Kawachi with a PB of 2:15 and a season best of 2:17. In recent years, we've seen a lot more Japanese runners come out for the Atlas events. They've won Hobart, they've won Brisbane, they've won Cairns. Sunshine Coast is obviously the next target for them. We've also got Richie Egan with a PB of 2:22. He's targeting a 2:20 at Berlin Marathon a little bit later in the year. We've got from Ethiopia, Gishi Adi Wakafrom, a 2:21 marathoner and recent winner of the Brisbane Half Marathon. Now, details about the women's marathon. Not a lot of information here, but Cassie Fine, who is a well-known runner in these parts, she is one of the entrants, so I'm sure she'll be one of the main contenders. Moving on to the half marathon, we've got Liam Adams, an Olympian who's returning to the Sunshine Coast to run the half marathon. He won 2 years ago when the Australian Championships were held in conjunction. He beat Andy Buchanan on that day, and obviously Andy has gone on to set a new Australian marathon record, and also just recently at the Gold Coast he ran the fastest ever half marathon on Australian soil. So we've got Liam there with a PB of 62:15. He looks to be the standout for the men. On the women's side of things, we have Tara Palm, who has a PB of 70:15, and she's got recent wins in Ballarat and Adelaide at the half marathon distance, and earlier this year she was 6th in the Osaka Marathon. So there's 2 to watch out for in the half marathon. Also taking part in the half marathon this weekend too is a couple of football legends, AFL's Lance Buddy Franklin and also the NRL's Jonathan JT Thurston. They are ambassadors for the Indigenous Marathon Foundation. They ran the Gold Coast a few weeks ago, the half marathon, and they're using these half marathons as preparation to run the New York Marathon later this year. So I'm sure they're going to be very popular with not only runners but also spectators out on course on Sunday. Saturday in a few days' time. All right, guys, that's just a really quick look at the elite side of things for the Sunshine Coast Marathon Festival this weekend. Let me know down in the comments if you are running one of the events this weekend. There are plenty of them outside of the marathon and the half marathon. There's the 10K, the 5K, and the kiddies events as well. So, let me know, guys, if you are planning to be on the Sunshine Coast. Other than that, guys, that's about it for this video. Make sure you do look out for my race wrap from the Sunshine Coast Marathon Festival as part of the Sydney Marathon going forward. And other than that, thanks for getting through to this point in the video. Take care, and I might see you out on course on the weekend. Catch you next time.